Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, whenever and wherever you're watching or listening. This is the Stochastic NHL DFS Strategy Show. I am your host, Michael Clifford. You'll notice solo today. Josh has a doctor's appointment with his oldest son, one of those scheduled things that he has to do every once in a while. So I am here to break down tonight's 9-game slate. Before we get too much further, just want to thank everybody again for all the support you've shown us over the last month or so. Josh and I talk about it just about every show, but we're always blown away by all the support we've gotten from the community, whether it's people signing up through the affiliate link, which I will drop in the YouTube chat right now, whether it's just sharing our videos, sharing articles, whatever it is. It's certainly been awesome to see. It's been overwhelming, honestly. So thanks again so much for the help. If you do feel like signing up, if you're not a member of Stochastic yet, just click through that link that I dropped in the YouTube chat. It'll help us out, help keep these shows coming on the regular, mostly on the regular. I don't know if anybody saw the NHL schedule next week. I think there's 2 games Sunday, 1 game Monday, 2 games Tuesday, 3 games Wednesday. So won't be any shows next week. That rolls into the All-Star break, so we'll be off for a little while, but we'll be here today, tomorrow, Thursday, and Saturday, breaking down the NHL slates. Quickly looking at last night's slate, pretty wild, to kind of say the least. Here's the winning lineup in the $15. Hadeker, Foot, Zucker, and Durzi, 2-man plus defenseman. Had New Jersey's top line, Brandon Montour and Thatcher Demko in net. Shout out to everybody that got Thatcher Demko getting 31 shots for that shutout against Chicago. I did not expect Chicago to get to 30 shots last night. That was big for anybody that rostered Demko. If you looked at the final DK scores of all the players on the slate, I think there was 8 skaters that managed at least 21 points, and 6 of them came from that New Jersey Vegas game. That was a wild game. Only caught the third period, but pretty wild game, pretty back and forth. So you definitely needed skaters out of that game. Tyler Toffoli with a hat trick, Chandler Stevens, 3-point game, Nicholas Roy, 3-point game, Jonathan Marsh had a monster game as well. So you definitely needed players out of that game. But we're turning the page here today. We're getting to the 9-game slate that we have here ahead of us tonight. Again, if you want to join Stochastic, you want to get access to the tools that we show on the show, you want to get access to the premium Discord, just click through that link. You can do weekly, you can do monthly. Kind of tough time with the NHL All-Star break coming up shortly, but again, we do appreciate any support you guys have been able to give us, and you guys have been giving us a lot. So again, thank you very much for that. All right, let's move along. Let's get to our first game here. We have the Dallas Stars wearing my victory green today. Going into Detroit, Dallas has a 3.5 implied team total. Detroit sitting at 3.0. Jake Ottinger back in net for the Stars. Expected to be Alex Lyon for Detroit. Lyon has had a very good season. Ottinger really hasn't. I mean, it's been up and down. He was pretty good through the first month or so. His 15 starts before his injury, save percentage was like 885. Like, he had really been struggling. He was the reason why Dallas couldn't really pull away in their division or in their conference for, they should comfortably make a playoff spot. But a goalie returning from injury is always kind of interesting, because it's one of those things like, is he fully recovered? Was he playing injured before? Bringing up Thatcher Demko earlier, Thatcher Demko had a brutal start to his season last year, went out with an injury, came back, and then was a brick wall over the final 2 months, and it's something that's carried over into this season. So, was he playing through an injury? Has Ottinger been playing through an injury? I guess we're going to find out soon enough here tonight. The one thing I want to mention is Dallas's top line. Wyatt Johnston is expected to stay there on the top line in place of Joe Pavelski. Before I go further, I should shout out Clayton. Clayton, thank you very much for the $10 super chat. He says, appreciate your help. We appreciate you being in our Discord. Certainly a very respected member of our Discord, always willing to help out others, always sharing information, sharing lines, and, always keeping things light with a couple jokes every once in a while. So thanks a lot for that super chat. We appreciate it. Just glad to see you in the Discord just about every day. So back to Dallas, Wyatt Johnston on the top line. I wrote up Rope hints in my picks article today. If you want to read it, just head on over to stochastic.com, head on over to the NHL section. You can read my article Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. I wrote up Rope hints, but what I wrote about Wyatt Johnston is that in the limited time him and Hintz have skated together at 5-on-5 this season, they're out shooting the opposition 37-16 in just 49 minutes together. And that is a small sample, but what I wanted to note was that when Wyatt Johnston has been off the third line, so away from Jamie Benn and Evgeny Dodonov and Ty Dellandrea and all that, 68% expected goal share. That is an absolute monster number. So Wyatt Johnston going to that top line should benefit not only Johnston, but that top line as well. 80 minutes for Dallas's top line this season without Pavelski, 4.3 expected goals per 60 minutes. Rope hints, he's not a big volume shooter, which is why he won't necessarily project well. But he is a great playmaker, and obviously he's a high percentage finisher, which is why he can rack up the goals at times. Jason Robertson, obviously an elite winger. It's just a very, very good line. And going into Detroit is nothing to really be scared of. Detroit's top line that with Dylan Larkin, Lucas Raymond, and David Perron, not good defensively at all. 2.7 expected goals against per 60 minutes in 130 minutes together this season. That's below average. They don't have very much offensive generation. Their actual goals is a little bit above league average, but honestly, that's not very good for a Dylan Larkin line. They're getting outplayed most nights. Now, as I said, Alex Lyon has had a pretty good season, so the goals against numbers don't look horrific through the lineup. They're really bad for this top line at 4.6 goals against per 60 minutes. I like this matchup for Dallas's top line. I like it at 5-on-5. The Detroit penalty kill has been better, but a lot of it has been the goaltending. I think it's a .915 save percentage they've had on the penalty kill from their goalies over their last 15 games. So, while the penalty kill has been good, it's been unsustainably good because their goalies have been so great. A .915 is just not something that teams can keep up on the penalty kill over any meaningful sample. So I think this is a decent spot for Dallas. It's not a tremendous power play spot, but I think it's such a good 5-on-5 spot that it's kind of worth taking a shot on him. There's not a lot of ownership coming in on Dallas here today. The top stacks tool here at Stochastic has them with a 7.5% top 2%, 6.4% ownership. That's perfectly fine on a slate of this size. Dallas has a 3.5 total. That is a very, very high total. Now, there are a lot of road teams in good spots. We'll get to Ottawa later. Obviously, Buffalo and the New York Rangers at the end of the slate. So it's not the highest road total, but it is one of the highest totals on the slate. So I really, really do like Dallas 1 here. If people want to dip down to Dallas 2, I have no real issue doing that. The Duchesne, Seguin, Marchman line has been pretty good basically all season. Their expected goals numbers have taken a little bit of a dive. Matt Duchesne, only 16 shots in his last 10 games. They're not really generating a lot. Now they're really starting to ride percentages, and that's always scary because as soon as those percentages dry up, there's no DFS value. There are times where a line will get 1 goal, but they generate so much, that at least one guy, if not 2, can get a shot bonus. Probably not the case with this Dallas line. And they're going to see a fair bit of that JT Compher matchup as well. And I don't think a whole lot of JT Compher, but at the very least, his line has been solid defensively. So I think it's a much better matchup for Dallas 1. I really like the Dallas top line in this matchup. They should be in consideration for anybody looking at those mid-price stacks on DraftKings, the $16,000 to $18,000 range. I really like Dallas 1 in there. On the Detroit side, I really just don't have a whole lot of interest in Detroit. There's not much ownership. That's the one thing that we can hang our hats on for this slate. That Detroit top line under 1%, the Detroit second line under 1%. That Detroit top line is perfectly correlated on the power play. Oddly enough, I was looking at some of Detroit's power play numbers this season. Detroit's power play is actually generating about 20% more shot attempts without Alex DeBrincat up there. And I'm wondering if it's one of those, because they don't have that one guy that they have to focus on getting the puck to, if it's not creating more opportunities for everybody else. And that kind of lightens up the defense a little bit. Whatever it is, they are generating more on the power play. They do draw a lot of power play opportunities. That is something that Detroit does very well. They're drawing 4 minor penalties per game over their last 8 weeks. That is very, very high. The league average is about 3.4. So they're about 20% higher, or nearly 20% higher than that. So I don't mind going to Detroit 1, but I think it's one of those situations where I would look to that line if I was playing like 20 lineups, if I was playing in a 150 max, that sort of thing. Maybe have 1%, 2%, 3% of that line. I don't think I'll be getting there in my single entry contest tonight. All right, moving on to one of the main events of the slate here tonight. Montreal is hosting Ottawa. Ottawa has a 3.6 implied goal total. Montreal is sitting with a 3.1 implied goal total. Montreal has made a lot of lineup changes. They sent Justin Barron to the AHL. Jordan Harris, no relation to Josh that I know of. He's out of the lineup. Jonathan Kovacevic is back in. Arber Xhekaj is up from the AHL and back in the lineup. And Tanner Pearson is also back in the lineup for Montreal. Now, I didn't see any line rushes for the Habs. I don't know where Pearson's going to slot. They sent Mitchell Stevens down, but he's a center. They're kind of running out of centers. Like, they have Suzuki, they have Monahan, they have Jake Evans. They don't really Jake Evans has looked pretty rough for Montreal. And, Josh Anderson or Tanner Pearson has played a lot with Gallagher and Evans this season. Wondering if he doesn't go there and then Josh Anderson goes to the fourth line. Whatever it is, I think it's going to be from the depth lines. I don't think it'll affect the top line too much. The top line for Montreal is coming in with a lot of ownership. They're coming in with 15% ownership here on this slate. They are expected to be one of the highest owned lines. That's something I want to mention real quick too, is that there are only 3 lines that we have projected for at least 10% ownership on DraftKings here tonight. Now, maybe it ends up being 4 or 5 lines. Like, these ownerships aren't always, bang on exact. Or as my cousin Vinny would say, dead on balls accurate. I love that movie. But they are going to be probably the highest owned line outside of Edmonton here tonight. That's always concerning because this line has not been playing well. Their last 10 games, 1.7 expected goals for per 60 minutes at 5-on-5, 3 expected goals against, only 1.4 actual goals for per 60 minutes at 5-on-5. Slafkovsky and Suzuki over the last few weeks are both under 10 shot attempts per 60 minutes. Like, that's genuine fourth line stuff. They're just not creating a lot. It's Cole Caulfield, and then the other guys are basically trying to set him up. That is worrisome when you see ownership up at 15%. Now, I don't have a particular problem using them because Ottawa is pretty bad defensively. The top line for Ottawa is at 3.3 expected goals against. The second line for Ottawa, depends what combinations you look at, because Ridley Grigg hasn't been there a lot, and he's typically been good defensively, but Stützle and Batherson, not great defensive numbers either, certainly below average. Ottawa's penalty kill, also very bad. They're also at 3.8 minor penalties per game. Again, that's much higher than the league average of 3.4. So I do get wanting to play Montreal here tonight. But it just feels like a lot of ownership. That's kind of all that I'm getting at. Like, 15% is very high. If you look at other lines in that price range, and we'll talk about them later, like the Philly top line is in that price range, coming in with 2/3 the ownership. There's an Anaheim line coming in with about 1/5 the ownership of that line. There's another Anaheim line coming in about half the ownership. Like, there's just a lot of spots here with a lot lower ownership. They do have an 8.2% top 2 stack percentage. That's a top 10 on this slate. It's actually higher than the Dallas top line that we just talked about. It just feels like, for a line that's not playing very well right now, with 2 guys that aren't shooting, I know it's a good matchup against Ottawa. Montreal's my team. I just don't think I can kind of get behind 15% ownership on that line. Montreal 2, and for here, I'm classifying Montreal 2 as the Josh Roy, Sean Monahan line. They've looked pretty good. And, obviously it's only been about 4 games, but, Monahan and Josh Roy, 63 shot attempts per 60 minutes. Roy, Armia, Monahan over the last 3 weeks are 1st, 3rd, and 5th on the team amongst their forwards in shot attempts. So these are the guys that are taking the shots. I'm not super concerned about depth matchups from Ottawa. They are coming with a lot of ownership because they're one of those lines that you can slam in with Edmonton. But honestly, if you're not playing Edmonton here tonight, I don't see a need to go down that cheap. But I do like Armia as a one-off. I do like Roy as a one-off. I just don't think there's a lot that I want to stack. On the Ottawa side, I wrote up Drake Batherson in the picks article. The reason I did that is he's just not playing with Josh Norris. Like, that's kind of the way it is. Like, I feel bad for slandering Josh Norris. And to be fair, his line had a really, really good game in Philadelphia on Sunday. Norris has just had a really bad season. If you look at Batherson's numbers away from him, 2.7 expected goals for, 3.2 actual goals for. They're much, much higher away from Josh Norris. 32% expected goals increase, 47% actual goals increase. He's just a lot better when he doesn't have to play with a center that has been dragging him down. Now, a lot of that time has been with Tim Stützle. Some of that time has been with Ridley Greig, but he's playing with both of them here in this game. Ottawa's second line is not coming in with a whole bunch of ownership either. They're coming in at about 3.3% ownership. Batherson and Stützle are both on the top power play unit. Montreal's penalty kill is not good. Neither penalty kill is good. In fact, they're both about neck and neck with each other, bottom 6, bottom 7 in the league over their last 20 games. So I do like that Ottawa second line. If you want to go with the Ottawa top line, I don't have a big problem with it. For as rough as they are defensively, Tkachuk and Giroux are good enough offensively to carry Norris. Norris is not on the top power play unit, or at least he wasn't the last game, so they don't have perfect correlation. But they are generating 3 expected goals and 3.7 actual goals per 60 minutes of 5-on-5 this season. It's just they're probably going to go into that Montreal line. Now, the Montreal line has struggled defensively of late, but has generally been very, very good defensively this season. Maybe some changes on defense will help them out a little bit. I just think I like Ottawa 2 more. They're cheaper. They're coming in with a lot less ownership. If you want to take out Greig and put in Tkachuk and just make it like a more of a full line stack, I think that's perfectly fine. But it's Ottawa 2 that I like best in this matchup. All right, let's get to our next one. We have Tampa Bay with a 3.0 total going into Philadelphia. The Philadelphia Flyers have a 3.1 total. Looks like Samuel Ersson back in net for the Flyers. He's been really, really good after a few tough starts at the very beginning of the season for him. I suspect Andrei Vasilevsky will go for Tampa. We'll see. I wrote up Philly's top line in our picks article today, and the reason I wrote them up was I thought Owen Tippett might be back. He's not. He's not going to be playing tonight. Philly will be going 11-7, 11 forward, 7 defensemen. That should mix up their lines a fair bit throughout the game. But Couturier and Farabee and Travis Konechny have been pretty good this season. 83 shot attempts, 3 expected goals, 4.4 actual goals per 60 minutes of 5-on-5. Joel Farabee is amongst the league leaders in points per minute at 5-on-5. In fact, for his career, he's generally been a pretty good 5-on-5 producer. He just doesn't get a ton of minutes. With the team going 11-7 tonight, like, there are only so many forwards that they can play. So they probably should get a lot of ice time here tonight. They're probably going to be matched up against the top line from Tampa Bay. The top line for Tampa Bay of Stamkos, Kucherov, and Point, 3.7 expected goals, 4.0 actual goals against per 60 minutes of 5-on-5. That is just brutal, honestly. It's not all that surprising. Those guys typically don't have tremendous offensive numbers together, but it gives this top line for Philly a lot of upside because they are aligned. Whether it was Tippett, whether it's now Farabee or Tyson Forster or whomever, they've typically been able to just dominate whomever they play against. I think they stand a good chance of that again here tonight. Now, our top stacks run has Tyson Forster on the top line, has that line coming in just under 10% owned. Now, Forster is quite a bit cheaper than Farabee. So with that price increase, with that line going up to nearly $18K, if Farabee is there, that's probably going to drive down the ownership, honestly. One of the reasons why you would play the Flyers top line with Forster there is because they were under 16K. If they're closer to 18K, it is just going to drive down ownership. And honestly, like Forster's having a good season, but Farabee is a big upgrade offensively on that line. So I really do like Philly 1, and I don't think they're going to come in with as much ownership as we're showing just because of that price difference between Forster and Farabee. So Philly 1 is certainly in play for me here tonight. It looks like they're perfectly correlated on the power play. Philly's power play has generally struggled pretty hard this season, but perfect correlation is nothing to throw away. So I really do like Philly 1 here. Philly 2 with Frost, Atkinson, and probably Tyson Forster, I'm not as high on. I think one-offing some of the players is fine. Like if you want to one-off Forster because he's so cheap, I think he can do that. I would probably prefer Cam Atkinson. He's not that expensive, and he's only $1,100 more than Forster. And Atkinson, he's had pretty good playmaking numbers so far this season, like well above average. And he's also a guy that likes to shoot. He has 33 shots in his last 10 games. So like this is a guy that can shoot and has pretty good playmaking numbers. I really do like Atkinson as a one-off, but I think it's Philly's top line I like best. The question is what to do with Tampa Bay here, because I think it's a brutal matchup going into Philly. Philly still has an excellent penalty kill as they have all season. I look to see if there's any fall off over their last even just 10 or 12 games, and there really hasn't been. The Tampa Bay top line has been generating a good amount of offense, 3.1 expected goals. They're not coming in with any ownership. That's the one thing that's kind of giving me a little pause, but they are expensive. $24,300 for that top line. Now, only 1.2% ownership. So obviously, if their shooting percentages do regress tonight, like they can absolutely hammer any goalie in any matchup. But when you're paying basically Colorado 1 prices, like you want to get 22, 23, 24 minutes. I don't think you're going to get that from Stamkos at the very least. These guys have all been shooting a little bit less of late as well. Kucherov only has 29 shots in his last 10 games. Now he still has 17 points in there because, Kucherov is Kucherov. But again, it's one of those spots where I'm not sure if you can rely on guys getting those shot bonuses on DraftKings. And when you're paying $24,300, you really want to be able to get those bonuses. Otherwise, you're probably relying on like 4 goals from this line. And that just feels like a lot. I just think there are other low-owned spots on this slate to go to that you don't have to chase the 1%. So I'm not super high on Tampa 1 here. Tampa Bay 2 is a little bit more interesting. Nick Paul is still showing in the top stacks tool, but it's Mikey Eyssimont that's going to be there. Mikey Eyssimont, one of my favorite players to watch. Him and Anthony Cirelli have been great together this season. This line as a whole, now only 45 minutes together, a little bit under 74 shot attempts for, 56 against per 60. Cirelli and Eyssimont have their best numbers with Tanner Jeannot, but they have great numbers without Tanner Jeannot either. They'll avoid that Sean Couturier matchup. I'm not stacking them, but I think a 2-man of Cirelli and Eyssimont, or just one-offing Eyssimont if you want to, I think that makes more sense than stacking Tampa Bay's top line here in this game. All right. Vegas, 2.7 total going into New York to face the Islanders. The Islanders have a 3.2 total. Obviously, it's Patrick Waugh's second game beyond the bench. That still feels really weird to say. Vegas started Logan Thompson last night. Logan Thompson got shelled by New Jersey. New Jersey won 6-5 in overtime. Now, it'll be interesting to see what Vegas decides to do in net, because they called up Isaiah Seville, who does not have any NHL games to his name, because Aiden Hill is hurt. Now, Hill was with the team. I suspect that Hill might get a start. We'll have to see when warm-ups hit. I would have a little bit of interest in Hill if he can get into the lineup here tonight. We're going to have to wait and see. We're going to have to wait and see what lineups or what the coach decides to do. I would have interest in Hill in net. They might go Thompson back-to-back if they want to save Hill. We'll see. Thankfully on DK, they're Logan Thompson's $200 more expensive. I think you just put Thompson in if you want to play the Vegas goalie and then, swap out at warmups. But as Quick Party says, they're expecting Hill. I think Hill will be in. He had a really, really good start to the season. Then he got hurt. He's been out for a while. We'll see how Aiden Hill can perform if he gets in net here tonight. I really don't know what to make of the Islanders because they were a really bad defensive team and then they fired their coach. And you never know how a team is going to respond. The one thing that Patrick Waugh did when he coached Colorado all those years back is his teams weren't very good defensively. I don't know how much he can help this Islanders roster. I'm going to assume not a whole lot changes until we get a little bit more of a sample than just one game. And even in that one game, they really needed Ilya Sorokin for the win. They beat Dallas, I think it was 3-2 over the weekend. Sorokin had to make 40 saves. So whether they're any better defensively, I guess we'll see. They're back, they had the Lee, Horvat, Barzal top line. They've still been producing 3.7 goals per 60 over their last 10 games. Matt Barzal, his playmaking numbers are just, top of the charts, near the top of the league so far this season. There's also not a lot of ownership coming in on this Islanders top line. I'll bring up our top stacks real quick. 6.7% ownership on the Islanders top line here. 9.4% top two stack percentage. This is another one of those mid-price lines where I think they're fine to use. Vegas, we saw how rough they've been defensively for basically the last month and a half. Last night in New Jersey, this top line has been very good offensively basically all season. I'm not worried about any matchups against Vegas. In fact, the Vegas top line with Dorofeyev, Stevenson, Stone, they're at 70 shot attempts per 60 minutes against at 5-on-5. That is really, really bad. Now, the Islanders, I believe they use JG Pajot in the shutdown matchup on Sunday. That is not going to go well if they keep doing that. So the Islanders top line is going to avoid that matchup, and I think that actually works against I think that actually kind of works against the Islanders here because I think the worst defensive line that Vegas has is their top line. And it's one of those things that happens with Carolina sometimes where Carolina puts Jordan Stahl in the shutdown matchup. But the better defensive lines are actually the second and third lines from the opposition, and it hurts Aho. I think that could be something that happens with the Islanders here. But I don't think Vegas is strong enough defensively overall with all their injuries to really be super concerned about it. So I don't mind Islanders one here. It's the only Islanders line that I have interest in. Pierre Engvall still not ready to come back for New York. He was skating this morning, but Hudson Fasching is still in his spot on the Islanders second line. Let's think about Pierre Engvall. I talked about it on Twitter a couple days ago. Engvall has high-end playmaking numbers so far this season. The tracking is done by Patreon called All Three Zones. His assist on scoring chances per 60 minutes of 5-on-5 is up there with guys like Nathan McKinnon. It's honestly pretty crazy. And if you look at the Islanders' numbers without Engvall, 2.9 expected goals for per 60 minutes. They're a lot higher with him, and I think his playmaking and his ability to carry the puck and create plays down low is something that Hudson Fasching just can't do. He has absolutely terrible playmaking numbers. So does Kyle Palmieri. It feels like, I'm slandering them into a hat trick, but No interest in Islanders too, so it's just Islanders 1 for me. On the Vegas side, like I think we can go back to that Roy Marchessault Barbashev line. They're not coming in with a lot of ownership, 4.5% ownership per the top stacks tool. They had a really good game last night. Marchessault has 39 shots in his last 10 games. Nicholas Roy has 10 shots in his last 5. This line is creating 3.3 expected goals per 60 minutes at 5-on-5. Now, power play correlation is an issue. Vegas does draw a decent amount of power plays. I still don't have a lot of long-term faith in their power play without Shea Theodore and without Jack Eichel. So I think with Vegas here, I don't mind taking one-offs. Like I think a one-off Dorofeyev actually makes sense. He's having a good season, and he's actually he looks to be a good player. Like he's not just some third wheel. So I don't mind him. Certainly a Jonathan Marchessault one-off is certainly in play. But I think the stack I like best in this game is on the New York Islanders side, and it is the New York Islanders top line. As I mentioned at the top of the show, we do have an affiliate link if people want to join Stochastic. I'll just drop it in the YouTube chat again. If you want to join Stochastic and you want to get access to all the great tools that we have projections for DraftKings, FanDuel, Yahoo. We have individual skater projections and goalie projections. We have ownership projections, obviously, the top stacks tool that we go through every show. We have the premium Discord. There's a whole lot that you get with your membership. Just click through that link that I just dropped in the YouTube chat. It helps us out, helps keep the lights on, so to speak. Gets you all those great tools, plus the access to the Discord, which is really helpful. We have people talking all the time about, what kinds of stacks to use, what kind of contests to play, opinions on players. Certainly late information, whether it's a player not out for warm up, whether it's a lineup change at warm up, those types of things. So just click through that link if you want to join us. You get access to all those tools. You get access to the Discord. It really helps us out a lot. And if you don't want to, that's just fine. Just click a thumbs up on this video. If you could share it on social media, all those little things certainly add up. So if you want to come join us, click through that link. If you don't, there's still other ways to support us one way or another. We certainly appreciate all the help you guys have been giving us. All right. Our next game is what could end up a little bit of a fiesta. We have the Washington Capitals going into Minnesota. Washington has a 2.7 total. Minnesota has a 3.2 total. Looks like Darcy Kemper going against Philip Gustafson. Marc-Andre Fleury still not healthy enough to start for Minnesota. Now, we didn't get Washington skate. I did see, I believe it was Bailey Johnston, one of the beat writers for the Capitals, say that the expectation is that Kuznetsov is going to be back between Tom Wilson and Alex Ovechkin. And oh my God, that's tremendous news for Minnesota, because Wilson, Ovechkin, and Kuznetsov is legitimately one of the worst defensive lines in the league. Ovechkin and Wilson have 160 minutes together without Dylan Strome as their center. Most of those minutes have been spent with Evgeny Kuznetsov. In their 160 minutes without Strome, 4.2 expected goals against per 60 minutes at 5-on-5, 4.1 actual goals against per 60 minutes at 5-on-5. Those are numbers where if you're not a goal scorer chasing Wayne Gretzky's record, if you're not Tom Wilson, who's got a long-term contract and is probably going to retire at Capitals, if those were numbers for guys that had just been called up to the AHL, they would be getting sent back down to the AHL. I can't say enough about how horrific that is. It's one of those things that you just don't see very often. Now, the question is which line Joel Eriksson-Ek is going to be matched up against. Joel Eriksson-Ek, Matt Boldy, Marcus Foligno look to be skating together. They were together on the weekend. Eriksson-Ek and Foligno don't really have good offensive numbers together. I don't think you really need good offensive numbers if you're going to be going up against that Kuznetsov line. Eriksson-Ek, I think he's kind of an underrated player. A lot, some of his work is defensive, but he does have a lot of offense to his game. He has 83 shots in his last 20 games, over 4 shots per game over his last 20 games. He has 15 points.
in that span. Obviously, we know how good Matt Boldy can be. Washington's penalty kill has struggled at times, but has been a lot better over their last 20 games. But there's not that much ownership coming in on Minnesota here tonight. That second line, Eriksson, Boldy, Foligno, 2.1% ownership, 3.2 top two stack probability. Now, Boldy and Eriksson are on the top power play unit together. Minnesota does draw a lot of power plays, 3.7 minor penalties drawn per game over their last couple months. If you want to take out Foligno and put in Kirill Kaprizov, I think you can do that. It makes it a really, really expensive stack. But this is a really, really good matchup for that Minnesota line. So I really do like Eriksson, Boldy, and Foligno. Again, I think I would probably turn into a power play stack and put Kirill Kaprizov with them. It's just a tremendous matchup against Washington. Like that Kuznetsov line, they're honestly so bad that unless they get a little bit lucky, they're probably going to get broken up by the middle of the second period. Now, the Washington top line has been. And by the Washington top line, I mean the TJ Oshie line. I don't mean the Ovechkin line, because I think TJ Oshie line has been the better line. I wrote up TJ Oshie in the picks article. He had a brutal start to the season with 2 points in 17 games, got injured, but in 10 games since that injury, 6 goals, 8 points, 3 shots per game. That is a lot more of what we'd expect from TJ Oshie. Him and Max Pacioretty, 53% of the shot attempt share in their 54 minutes together. Pacioretty has generally been a very good play driver for his career. So even though it's a small sample so far, Pacioretty's only been back for 6 games, I believe, maybe 7. Even though it's a small sample, I don't have a hard time believing that he's helped drive that line, especially with Dylan Strome there, because Dylan Strome, pretty good offensive numbers for himself as well. So I'm struggling here because it is a pretty good power play matchup for Washington. Washington's power play has generally sucked this year. But that Washington top line is not very expensive. TJ Oshie, obviously, he's only at 4K. Pacioretty and Strome aren't that much more expensive. And there's not a lot of ownership coming in on them. Under 1%, 1.1% top two stack percentage. It's not that high, but it's not that far off from the Ovechkin line at half the ownership. So I don't think single entry, I don't think I would stack them. Multi-entry, I think you have to consider that Pacioretty, Strome, Oshie line. Even going into Eriksson, just because Minnesota's penalty kill has generally been so bad and they take so many penalties, 3.9 minor penalties per game this season, or not this season, sorry, over the last couple months, 4th most in the league in that span. So if you want to one-off TJ Oshie, if you want to one-off Max Pacioretty, I think that's just fine. I would, and if you're playing 20 max or 150 or whatever, I think you do have to consider them as a filler for the more expensive lines here on this slate tonight. Our next game, we have the St. Louis Blues with a 2.7 total going to Calgary. Calgary has a 3.3 total. Andrew Mangiapane, he was kind of a question mark. He's going to be in. He's going to be back on his usual line with Blake Coleman and Michael Backlund. Top line, the same for Calgary. Coronado still with Zari and Kadri. They called up Cole Schwint. Looks like he's going to be going in on the 4th line for Adam Ruzicka. Nothing really to worry about from a DFS perspective. One thing I noticed about Calgary's top line, now, obviously anybody that's been playing DFS knows that Yegor Sharangovich and how good he's been, basically over like the last 6 weeks. Yegor Sharangovich is getting 50% more shot attempts at 5-on-5, playing with Jonathan Huberdeau than playing away from him. And something I mentioned on the show, I believe it was on Saturday, was that though Huberdeau's playmaking numbers haven't been that great this season, like definitely a big step back from what he was doing towards the end of his tenure in Florida, they are creating a fair number of chances off Huberdeau's zone entries. So it kind of stands to reason that, the guy that they're looking for on those zone entries is Yegor Sharangovich. They're going to get the depth from St. Louis too. And that's pretty important because the St. Louis top line, has been good defensively in their minutes together under new coach Drew Bannister. 195 minutes at 5-on-5 for the St. Louis top line, 2.3 expected goals against. That's better than league average. Only 1.6 actual goals against. That's a pretty good defensive line. The rest of St. Louis's lineup, not good defensively, and Calgary is going to get those. And that Calgary, Lindholm, Sharangovich, Huberdeau line is going to get those depth matchups. So I do like that line in a nutshell. The problem is like there's a fair bit of ownership on them. Like 7% is fairly high. Minus 4% on the leverage, 3% top two stack percentage. The other thing is that St. Louis doesn't take a ton of penalties. They're below average, below the league average in that sense, 3.2 minor penalties per game over the last 20 games. What I will say is like that's higher than it was earlier in the season. So they are taking more penalties as they go along. That Calgary top line, perfectly correlated on the power play as well. I'm not huge fans of that ownership, but it's kind of like what we talked about with Vegas yesterday. Is like if you're going to play an over-owned line, and they're probably going to be over-owned, like you want to play the ones that are in the better spots. And when I look at the lines that are negatively leveraged today, obviously Calgary has a bunch of them. Montreal has a bunch of them. Like Philadelphia and Anaheim both have negative leverage. I don't know if like Philadelphia is fine, I guess, against Tampa Bay, but Tampa Bay's generally had a good penalty kill. Flyers don't have a good power play. You need them to get there all at 5-on-5. Obviously, Anaheim's really struggled basically everywhere all season long. Buffalo's actually been good defensively. We'll get to that game a little bit later. So, it seems like this is one of the spots where I don't mind negative leverage. Now, Calgary one's not one of my favorite filler type stacks on the night, but I do think there are reasons to play them, even at that ownership level. So I don't mind Calgary 1 here tonight. If you want to dip down, go to Calgary 2 or Calgary 3. I think that's perfectly fine. But I want that perfectly correlated line that's going to be in the best matchup, because that Blake Coleman, Michael Backlund line is probably going to see a fair bit of the Kyrou, Buchnevich, Thomas line, and that's just a bad 5-on-5 matchup. And then, if St. Louis doesn't take a bunch of penalties, then, they're getting kind of boned for their DFS value. So it's Calgary 1 for me. The bigger question is what to do with St. Louis, because this St. Louis top line is only coming in at 5%. They're perfectly correlated on the power play. The Calgary penalty kill, though, has been great. What we mentioned the last time St. Louis was on the show is that Jake Neighbors is making a difference on the St. Louis top power play unit. But this is a pretty bad power play matchup for the Blues. Jacob Markstrom is back for Calgary as well. It's not like we got, old Danny V, Dan Vladar in net or anything like that. It is Jacob Markstrom back for Calgary. So Markstrom's been probably a top 3 goalie in the league so far this season. I think he's second by goals saved above expected per 60 minutes so far this season, or might be first ahead of Connor Hellebuck. I know they're 1 and 2. So this has been a really, really good goalie. This has been a really, really good penalty kill. That Calgary line's been pretty good defensively as well. So if St. Louis is 1-2% and I was playing a 20 backs, I would probably be interested. Where they're sitting at 5%, it just feels a little bit high for their top 2 stack percentage. So I'm not super high on anything on the St. Louis side for single entry for stacking purposes here tonight. All right, let's get to this next one. Oh, that went down the wrong pipe. 2.5 total for the Columbus Blue Jackets. They're going into Edmonton. Edmonton has a 4.3 implied goal total. All right. So this is obviously a really, really good matchup for Edmonton. Columbus has just been one of the worst defensive teams in the league all season long. Hasn't really gotten better. I wrote up Zach Hyman in the picks article today. What I wrote about is that his shots per game has been declining lately, but even that decline is 3.8 shots per game over his last 10 games. So it's even though it is a decline, he's still getting a lot of volume off, and it's definitely a threat for the shot bonus. The top line has seen their percentages dry up. but they're still creating a lot. 3.8 expected goals over 36 shots per 60 over their last 10 games. So that Edmonton top line still creating quite a bit. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins over his last 11 games is over 3 shots per game. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins also has really good playmaking numbers. Obviously, we know everything we need to know about Connor McDavid. On the other side, you got Cole Sillinger. Cole Sillinger on the top line with Johnny Gaudreau and Yegor Chinnikov. Sillinger and Gaudreau are up near 90 minutes together so far this season. 3.2 expected goals against per 60 minutes. Like, this is a matchup that the Edmonton top line should dominate. And believe it or not, this is kind of funny. They're actually a little bit cheaper than Tampa Bay here. Now, obviously, because they are a little bit cheaper because it is a way better home matchup for them, they're coming with a lot more ownership, 17.9%. But obviously, they have a massive top 2 stack potential, up near 40% on DraftKings here tonight. So I really do like Edmonton 1. What I worry about is the problem that Vancouver 1 kind of ran into last night. It's like, when you're playing these teams like San Jose and Chicago and Columbus, like, seems like the teams don't even really care. like that was just a 2-0 game last night between Edmonton and Chicago. And Elias Pettersson didn't even crack 17 minutes. I think Brock Besser was like closer to like 15 minutes or something like that. Like, they weren't getting their normal ice time because they just expected to roll over this team. I worry about that with Edmonton. But they're also like still so good where, like, if they only get 16 or 17 minutes, they can still score 4 goals. Like, I do like Edmonton 1. It is a lot of ownership. I do think there are some minutes concerns, but I think if they don't play a lot of minutes, it's because they're up 4 or 5-0 already. So I really do like Edmonton 1. If you want to dip down to Edmonton 2, no problem there. That top 2 percentage is actually pretty funny considering there's only one guy on the top power play unit. 11.5%. Fogle, Kane, and Draisaitl have been very good together. 4 expected goals per 60 minutes in nearly 60 minutes together. They've had really good numbers even without Evander Kane there. So no problem going to Edmonton 2. The more interesting side is the Columbus side. 2.5 total is definitely not much to speak of. I don't want anything to do with that top line. Like I said on the show on Friday, I believe. Not a Cole Sillinger fan whatsoever. Doesn't shoot a lot. No playmaking. Not much for transition work. Yegor Chinnikov is a little bit better than that. He has decent playmaking numbers, decent on entries, but I don't think that's enough. Like, this Edmonton top line is actually really good defensively. Their penalty kill has been really good as well. So there's just not a lot that I really like from that Columbus top line. The Columbus second line is a little bit more interesting to me. Jack Roslovic and Boone Jenner up near 105 minutes together, 2.9 expected goals for. That's actually not that bad. They're going to be going into that Edmonton second line, and the Edmonton second line has generally been the worst defensive line. I don't know if there's enough here where I want to go out and full stack them, but I certainly think like a one-off Adam Fantilli, one-off Boone Jenner, I think those things kind of make sense in this matchup, but there's nothing on the Columbus side that I have a lot of interest in stacking here tonight. Josh isn't here, but I do want to shout out the work that he's doing on the MMA side. He's going to be, he had a short MMA video up last week. Obviously, a lot of that is because of the sims that were introduced at Stokastic. Stokastic now has MMA sims as they do for the NFL. If you want to try out the MMA sims, again, just click through that affiliate link that I posted in the YouTube chat. Sign up through that. You can try out the MMA sims. Josh will have his videos posted up on his Twitter account at JRH. Let me double check this because I always forget it for some reason. Josh, please just get a normal Twitter account name at JRH002DFS. Go check out his Twitter account, check out his MMA stuff. He's going to be doing a little bit on that side here moving forward. All right, we got 2 games left to go to, and these are more fiestas. We have Buffalo going into Anaheim. Buffalo 3.5 total. Anaheim 2.9 total. Big news in this game is Olen Zellweger got called up by Anaheim. Looks like he's going to be running the top power play unit instead of Jackson Lacombe. So anybody that read my picks article today saw Jackson Lacombe in there. He's not going to be running the top power play unit anymore. That really hurts his DFS value. Olen Zellweger, I talked about it briefly in our Discord, but there are 3 defense prospects that I'm really excited to see at the NHL level. Brant Clark is one. He had the shot bonus and the block bonus for Los Angeles last night. He's gotten to the NHL, but he's only gotten in a few games. Lane Hudson is another Montreal prospect. And Olen Zellweger here is the third. I don't know if anybody watched him at the World Juniors, but like this is a guy that the offensive skill that he has is incredible, honestly. Some of the prospect models I look at have him as, nothing's a sure thing, but a pretty sure thing to not just be a regular NHLer, but to be a star offensive defenseman in the league. Now, he's not in the DK player pool. That sucks. But what it does do is it adds another puck mover to the lineup. And, they lost Mintyukov to injury. Jamie Drysdale got traded. Like, there are only so many guys that can move the puck on any defense group. And they lost 2 of them. Adding Zellweger does give them another puck mover on the blue line. And even though he's not in the player pool, it's something that should help their forwards out offensively. This matchup against Buffalo is kind of an interesting one because Buffalo, there are times when Buffalo looks like they're probably like a top 5 or top 6 team in the league. But the problem is it's only once every 4 or 5 games. And the other 3 or 4 games, they look like the team that they're going to be in, which is like, 20th and out of the playoffs or whatever. Jeff Skinner is back. He's going to be up on the top line with Alex Tuch and Tage Thompson. He's also going to be on the top power play unit. I really, really like this Buffalo top line. Like, as good as Zellweger is, I don't suspect he's going to be all that good defensively. I also think he was called up because Ilya Lyubushkin got hurt. He didn't play on Sunday. Maybe Quick Party has seen something on Twitter. Maybe he'll chime in here. Seen something on Twitter since we went on the air. But, once you get past basically Radko Gudas, like there's not any really great defensive defenseman. Him and Vakanainen have made a good pair. After that, it doesn't really matter. That Buffalo top line hasn't played a lot together because of injuries, because they've tried guys on different lines. But 3.3 expected goals in their time together going back to the start of November. Tage Thompson, 32 shots, 5 goals in his last 10 games. Maybe he's starting to finally come alive a little bit. More than anything, it's Anaheim's lack of discipline. 4.8 minor penalties per game over the last 2 months. No other team in the league is over 4.3. Florida is the next closest at, a little over 4.2. And then those are the only 2 teams over 4. Like, the reason why the league average is at about 3.4 times shorthanded per game, it's basically because of Anaheim and Florida. And Anaheim's penalty kill is also not very good. Buffalo moved Dylan Cousins to the top power play unit. They do have better shot generation numbers, but not better goal numbers on the power play with Cousins. Hopefully it's a little bit of positive regression to come. This Buffalo top line is not coming in with a lot of ownership either. We're showing them at 3.3% ownership. Now, I suspect it'll be a little bit higher, but even if it was like 5, 6, 7%, I really don't care in this matchup. Even if they go up against the Leo Carlson line, that line's been, about average defensively. I think that's the best you can ask for him. And then it's a tremendous power play matchup for Buffalo. So I really do like Buffalo 1 here in this matchup. I did write up Dylan Cousins in the picks article. Him and Greenway do have good offensive numbers together, just 55 minutes, but 3.2 expected goals per 60. Cousins has really good playmaking numbers. They're going to get the depth matchups from Anaheim, and honestly, there's not a lot to talk about from the Anaheim depth. Like, there's just too many injuries and too many guys that are still developing. So I don't mind dipping down to Buffalo 2. I guess they're technically slated as Buffalo 3 in the top stacks tool. That'd be Cousins, Quinn, and Greenway. But it is Buffalo 1 that I like best by quite a bit in this game. On the Anaheim side, I guess it's Terry Carlson and Henrique that I have some interest in because they do actually generate some offense. Like that Vetrano line has really been struggling, basically going back to early December, 2.1 expected goals per 60 minutes. Vetrano down to, I think it's 25 shots over his last 10 games. Like usually he has more shot volume than that. Like they were kind of riding percentages through the first couple months of the season. Those have dried up, and with it the points. So for me, it's Anaheim 1 or bust, but it is Buffalo 1 that I do like best in that matchup. All right, final game of the night. We have the New York Rangers going into San Jose to face the San Jose Sharks. New York has a 3.7 total. San Jose has a 2.2 total. Of note, William Eklund was moved back to the Thomas Hertl line last night. And I think that's pretty important because William Eklund has really good playmaking numbers this year, and Hertl's defensive numbers are better with him than without. Now, we won't get confirmation on that until warmups, and this is the last game of the slate, 10:30 Eastern. No other game starts at that time. So, if you do have Eklund and Hertl for whatever reason, you can swap down because I think Eklund's the second most expensive winger that they have at 3,300. But just watch for line changes for San Jose because they did change them towards the end of that game last night. Overall, I just don't have any interest in San Jose. If you want a one-off Zetterlund or Eklund or something like that, Duclair, fine, go ahead. It's just a really bad matchup against the Rangers. San Jose's just having a really tough time scoring. The fact that they scored 3 goals last night I think is more of an indictment of Los Angeles than anything. But this should be a somewhat tired San Jose team against a New York team that has generally been good defensively this season. I wrote up New York too for the picks article. They're at 3.0 expected goals, 3.8 actual goals per 60 over their last 10 games. Like this line just is not slowing down. There's no real matchup concerns on the San Jose side. And in fact, their penalty kill has really started to fall apart. And it's gotten to the point where San Jose is giving up the most power play goals against per game on the season. I think they just passed Anaheim because of last night's game. So I do have, I think both Rangers top lines are certainly in play here. I wrote up the Rangers second line because they're not coming in with a ton of ownership. 8.5% ownership. I think that's perfectly reasonable for that line that has one of the top 2 stack probabilities outside of Edmonton on the entire slate here tonight. They are expensive, but I think they're justifiably expensive. So I really do like that Rangers second line here in that game. So Rangers 2 for me. If you want to play Rangers 1, I think they're perfectly fine. Rangers 3 has actually been a sneaky good line. And if you're playing Edmonton here tonight, I think like a 2-man of like Brodzinski and Cooley or something like that is playable. But it is Rangers 2 that I like best. And yeah, I'm not playing anything from the San Jose side. Coming up later on Stokastic, 5 o'clock Eastern, you have the NBA Deeper Dive with Josh Engelman and Matt Bellman. And then at 6 o'clock Eastern, you have the NBA Live Before Lock with Greg Ehrenberg and Eric Lindquist. All right. Just to wrap things up, let's talk goalies and defensemen. The goalie I wrote up in my picks article was Ilya Sorokin. I think he looks like he's going to be the highest owned goalie, but he's also the goalie facing the most shots against per 60 minutes. And, like I said earlier, in Patrick Waugh's first game, Sorokin had to make 40 saves for the win. He's averaging 32 saves every 60 minutes. Whether he gets a lot against a tired Vegas team, I guess we'll see. But at 7,800 on DK, 7,900 on FanDuel, I think it's worth it. But he will be the highest owned goalie, I suspect, on the slate tonight. There are others that kind of stick out for me. Andrei Vasilevsky, if he gets to start against Philly. Philly's a good team, don't get me wrong, but they can't score on the power play. And if you can't score on the power play, I'm not super concerned about Vasilevsky getting completely blown up. Jordan Binnington, if you want to save some money going into Calgary, like I said, Calgary's penalty kill or power play has also struggled quite a bit generally this season. Binnington could face some good shot volume. He's had some pretty big games this season. He's only 7,200. He's one of the cheap goalies I like. Alex Lyon, if he gets to start for Detroit, I don't mind him in the mid-price range either. I think the pay-up goalie that I would look to, honestly, it might be Gustafsson, but there's really not a lot of goalies in that 8K plus range that I like here. I think the highest that I would go is Ilya Sorokin. I guess Korpisalo for Ottawa, because Montreal has been struggling to score, is fine, but Korpisalo's just had such a bad season. It feels tough to rely on him. But, if you're playing a bunch of lineups, I think there are worse options than Korpisalo. Let's just put it that way. On the blue line, I wrote up a couple guys. I wrote up Jackson Lacombe. Obviously, I don't think I would play him now just because of Volan Zellweger being in the lineup. I did write up Mike Matheson. 59 shots, 41 blocks in his last 20 games, but it's also a really good power play opportunity for him because the Ottawa penalty kill is so bad. Montreal's power play has actually been good since they moved Juraj Slavkovsky up there. So I think Mike Matheson is one of the expensive defensemen I like. Also like Rasmus Dahlin amongst the expensive defensemen, and Evan Bouchard as well. In the mid-price range, Jake Sanderson for Ottawa, he's on the top power play unit. Thomas Harley for Dallas for the same reason. Radko Gudas might have to block about 90 shots here tonight for Anaheim, so I don't mind him for his price, especially if they don't give Zellweger that much ice time. And Brock Faber's in play on every slate. Like Brock Faber gets like 13 DK points every single time he steps on the ice. Like it's actually kind of crazy. For cheaper defensemen, Owen Power, if you don't want to pay up for Dahlin, I think Owen Power makes sense for Buffalo. Adam Bokvist looks like he's going to be good to go for Columbus. He's been playing like 24 minutes a game on average over his last like 6 or 7 games. So I don't mind Bokvist for relatively cheap. Keandre Miller for the Rangers. He's a guy that does like to jump up into the play. It's a really good matchup going into San Jose. Don't mind Keandre Miller for cheap. And Matthias Ekholm, huge team total at home for Edmonton. So I don't mind Matthias Ekholm for cheap. If you're looking bargain bin, Igor Zamula still on the top power play unit for Philadelphia. He's under 3K on DraftKings. Nick Jensen, I think he's second in ice time for Washington amongst their defensemen over the last couple of weeks, and he's only 2,600. If you need a stone min $2,500 punt, Arbor Xhekaj back in the lineup for Montreal. He's not a bad offensive defenseman. He just takes way too many penalties. That's why that's why he got sent down to the AHL. I also saw he was averaging a penalty per game in the AHL, so maybe not a whole lot has changed. But he's the stone min punt if you need him at 2,500 here tonight. My hat trick pick. This one goes out to you, Josh. Tonight we are going to be Laffy Slappies. So I am going with Alexi Lafreniere, from the New York Rangers. He's going to be my hat trick pick for tonight. That'll do it for the show. I see Alex asking a question about San Jose defensemen that could be in line for the block bonus. Like they're always in line for the block bonus, but I think Henry Thrun is kind of the guy that I would look to. He played a monster minutes last night, over 25 minutes for San Jose. He's generally been around 20, 21 minutes. So I guess Thrawn at 2,900 if you're looking for blocks. But yeah, that does wrap things up for us here today. We will be back tomorrow. I believe it's a 6 or 7 game slate. Don't hold me to that. We'll be back tomorrow. Josh will be back tomorrow. We'll be here at the normal time. Again, click through the affiliate link that I'm about to drop in the YouTube channel. If you're looking to join us here at Stokastic, we'd certainly want to see you. We'd certainly appreciate the support. Please like and subscribe if you can. Those things do help us out for people that aren't members. And be sure to check the Discord for updates. God knows what John Tortorella is going to do to those lines at warm-up. So until tomorrow, good luck tonight, everybody. Hopefully we can win some money, and we'll see you in about 23 hours.